if a parent is traumatized, meaning this parent, they never got their real needs met. They were always giving and sacrificing, and this was the expectation placed upon them. So they're out in the world, they're caring for other people, which Black women have always been the caregivers. Let's be very clear. That has always been our role. And when you think about it, that's always been our role, to care for other people, especially when we talk about racism and white supremacy. Yeah, and having to care for people who are actively hurting you. How much of yourself do you have to sacrifice in order to survive that? Think about that. And what do you have left to give your children? And so that if our parent had to become inauthentic and numb and disconnected in order to survive their external experiences or a hostile world, then you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to teach my child the same so they can survive. I cannot teach my child how to thrive, because them thriving means that you could be hurt, you could be murdered, you could be jailed, you could be punished or prosecuted in some way because you're too loud, you're too authentic, you calling out the wrongdoings, whether it's in the family or whether it's in the culture or the neighborhood. Do you feel me? And so it requires a lot of self-suppression and self-disconnection. And this is why we cannot talk about some of these things without talking about our culture, without talking about white supremacy, without talking about racism. So for me to survive means that I had to go along to get along, then I cannot be emotionally available for my children. I will emotionally abandon them. And because I don't know how to validate their feelings, because I don't mirror their emotions, because I'm not vulnerable with them, the message that every human being gets in that experience is, I'm not enough. I'm not worthy. This is why it's so important for conversations like the ones that you're having and the ones on your podcast, because so much of our wounds, our shame, our feeling like we are not enough, so much of our need to help others and sacrifice in the name of love comes from not getting our core childhood needs met. Intergenerational trauma.
Man, I got chills. I'm serious. I do. That hits home a lot, just even for me. And it also explains how children, even as young as 13, starts to inherit the superwoman syndrome as girls.
I think it happens
right?
before that.
Really?
Oh, so it's called parentification. So it's common among Black households, Black girls, and even in cultures where there is poverty, where children are forced in a role to be well above their pay grade, well above their developmental age, take on the responsibilities of the household, be the little woman of the house.
Oh, yeah.
So Black women are taught to be responsible at a very young age. And it starts well before 13, because by 13, you got to know your chores. You got to be at least knowing how to cook, knowing to go around the house. You're probably watching your siblings. So it happens well before that age. But see, the problem is, if I have to take on the responsibilities of the parent, then who's meeting my needs?
Right.
So that leaves the child with a hole of unworthiness or abandonment, because their needs are their childhood needs that are so important, the necessary guidance, the nurturing, the protection. It doesn't happen because you are expected to be an adult.